Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Don Ma. A fresh ultimatum to Russia. President Trump threatening Putin with new tariffs while agreeing to send billions of dollars in weapons to Ukraine. We'll be hit with sanctions and what it could mean for the war. The European Union is putting trade countermeasures against the United States on hold for now. Two big votes on Capitol Hill this week. House lawmakers will address Pentagon funding and cryptocurrency. We have the details. The Pentagon is becoming the largest shareholder in an American rare earth materials company. It's going to be to build out the nation's rare earth magnet supply chain and reduce U.S. dependency on China. Central Texas is being hit with heavy rain and flooding again just 10 days after catastrophic floods hit the area. The situation right now and how the rain is impacting rescue efforts.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us today. The European Union is putting trade countermeasures against the United States on hold for now. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said the Union would delay a response until early August. The move is to allow more time to negotiate a deal. Here's von der Leyen.
Yes, indeed, the United States have sent us a letter with measures that would come into effect unless there is a negotiated solution. So we will therefore also extend the suspension of our countermeasures till early August. And at the same time, we will continue to prepare further countermeasures so we are fully prepared.
The delay comes after the U.S. threatened a 30% tariff on European goods beginning August 1st. European trade ministers are meeting in Brussels today to discuss transatlantic trade relations. Here's the story.
The EU agreed on Monday to prioritise trade talks with the US to avoid crippling tariffs. That's after President Donald Trump said he would impose 30% levies on most EU imports from August the 1st, an amount which the EU trade chief said would wreck transatlantic trade. However, diplomats said there's still time to hammer out an agreement to prevent this. European Trade Commissioner Maroš Šefčovič had said he'd sensed that talks with the US were approaching, quote, a good outcome for both sides. But this new tariff threat on Saturday had, quote, created a new dynamic.
So if you're talking about 30% or 30% plus, there will be a huge impact on trade. It will be almost impossible to continue the trading as we are used in a transatlantic relationship. And if you look at the impact this would have, so I have to say the transatlantic supply chains would be heavily affected on both sides of Atlantic.
He said the EU would need to prepare for all outcomes, including countermeasures. The Commission has already agreed to a package of potential tariffs on $24.5 billion worth of US goods, but has proposed suspending this package for now. It's also likely to seek a green light for a second package that had hit $84 million worth of US goods. Some EU ministers have agreed with this suspension, saying it's too early to impose countermeasures.
Meanwhile, National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett answered questions today outside the White House. Hassett addressed reports on the Chinese economy as well as European Union defense spending.
Do you have a reaction to the better than expected economic data coming out of China? Is that sort of the antithesis of what Trump's trade policy is needing to do in terms of constraining China?
There's a lot of ambiguity about what the real data in China are, and I'd have to study the latest data to see if I believe it. But there certainly have been lots of reports, anecdotal reports of troubles in China. But to the extent that the global economy is responding positively to technological change, which we're seeing across the world because of like better computers and so on, it might have been a positive thing for them, but I've not studied the Chinese data.
But a lot of it is based on the expansion of sort of non-US trading partners. I mean, is that
we have normalized our trade relations somewhat with China over the last few months.
President Trump was clearly upset against Spain at the Hague summit and the need for a lack of commitment on military spending, and he said he would negotiate directly with Spain on tariffs. Did that happen? Because clearly the negotiations are between the EU as a bloc. Did that happen? Will Spain suffer consequences?
But Most of the trade policy in Europe is done through the EU, and so specific discussions with Spain have not been briefed on. Apologies. We'll see. We've got a few weeks left.
Hassett was also asked about President Trump's decision to hit Brazil with a 50% tariff. Trump posted a copy of his letter to the Brazilian president on Truth Social July 9th. Trump pointed to the ongoing trial of the nation's former president, Jair Bolsonaro. Bolsonaro is currently on trial for charges stemming from an alleged plot to overturn Brazil's 2022 election results. Trump has also called Bolsonaro's trial a, quote, witch hunt. President Trump announcing today the U.S. will send billions of dollars worth of weapons to Ukraine through NATO allies. He's also threatening to impose 100% secondary tariffs on Russia if no peace is reached in 50 days. Joining us now live is NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao. Good afternoon, Iris. What's in the latest announcement today? Talk to us.
Good afternoon to you as well, Don. So during a sit-down meeting with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte this morning at the White House, President Trump announced that the U.S. would now allow NATO nations and European countries to buy advanced weapons made by the U.S., including, for example, advanced missile systems like the Patriot missiles, as well as air defense systems for them to be sent to Ukraine to help it defend the war against Russia. It comes as Trump stresses that security in Europe is important, and also Rutte says that it's going to provide some significant help to Ukraine. Watch.
We're going to be sending them weapons, and they're going to be paying for them. We want to defend our country, but ultimately, having a strong Europe is a very good thing.
It will mean that Ukraine can get its hands on really massive numbers of military equipment. So if I was Vladimir Putin today, I would reconsider whether I should not take negotiations about Ukraine more seriously than I would.
Meanwhile, both leaders today emphasized that speed is of the essence here. President Trump says that missiles like the Patriot missiles can arrive in Ukraine within days, and Rutte says that the U.S. will be backfilling the country's stockpiles of weapons to allow them to quickly move equipment into Ukraine. Meanwhile, the fresh U.S. support today comes as President Trump is growing increasingly frustrated with Russia's Vladimir Putin, especially as Trump says that Russia has continued to bombard Ukraine despite what he calls pleasant cause that did not yield actual results. Now President Trump is vowing 100% in secondary tariffs are targeting Russia if it did not reach a peace deal within the next 50 days. Watch.
I'm disappointed in President Putin because I thought we would have had a deal 2 months ago, but it doesn't seem to get there. So based on that, we're going to be doing secondary tariffs if we don't have a deal in 50 days. It's very simple. And they'll be at 100%.
Meanwhile, for months, President Trump has been trying to negotiate a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine, though he says that he has not imposed a strong and heavy sanctions on Russia in hopes of reaching a peace deal. But now he's giving this ultimatum to Russia, saying that Putin has been doing all talks but no solid action.
And after that happens 3 or 4 times, you say, the talk doesn't mean anything. The talk doesn't talk. It's got to be action. It's got to be results.
Meanwhile, on a Senate bill that would impose even steeper sanctions on Russia, President Trump today responded saying that he's not sure if the U.S. needs it, but it could be very useful. Back to you, Don.
And Iris, please explain for us how secondary tariffs work and which countries might be hit the heaviest with such sanctions.
Sure. So specifically, secondary sanctions really mean that it's targeting countries who are doing trade with Russia, because the U.S. actually does not do that much trade directly with Russia. So the country that's expected to be hit the hardest in this potential scenario will be actually China, who is the leading trade partner, the largest trading partner with Russia, as China imports a ton of Russia's crude oil as well as natural gas. And if the U.S. actually imposes what it calls secondary tariffs on trading partners with Russia, that means that if China continues to trade with Russia, it would face a 100% tariff for its goods and trying to come into the U.S. And essentially, that will force China to really choose between to continue trading with Russia or to really try to preserve its market access with the U.S., which, of course, it relies on for its market export-driven economy inside China. Remember that escalated trade tensions during the past few months, but before a tariff ease between the two countries really struck China's economy. And as President Trump previously said that there even was some domestic unrest in China because of the economic impact of high tariffs. So it remains to be seen, of course, if any peace deal is struck in the next 50 days and if that actually happens when U.S. imposes 100% secondary tariffs on trading partners with Russia, how China will then react. Don.
Okay, Iris, thank you so much. In Kyiv, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky met with U.S. envoy Keith Kellogg today. Speaking during a meeting in the presidential office, Zelensky said he spoke to Kellogg about air defense. Here he is.
We are thankful to President Trump for his all messages and very strong decisions about resuming delivers for us, and we are thankful for bipartisan support. Just now we spoke about air defense with General.
Zelensky wrote on social media that they also discussed sanctions against Russia. On Sunday, Zelensky said he instructed military commanders to brief Kellogg on Russia's capabilities and Ukraine's prospects. He said negotiations on further support will take place during the week. He also said he wanted the U.S. to understand fully what could be done to compel Russia to make peace. Kellogg will also meet the leaders of Ukraine's security service and intelligence service. President Donald Trump says the United States will deliver Patriot air defense missiles to Ukraine. Speaking to reporters, Trump said the U.S. will not bear any costs for the weapon for Ukraine. The European Union will cover the costs. So joining us now to discuss is David Wormser, senior analyst at the Center for Security Policy and former senior advisor to U.S. Vice President Cheney on Middle East and strategic affairs. Good afternoon, David. So also today, the latest is that President Donald Trump threatened to impose a 100% secondary tariff on Russian goods. So if Moscow, that is, if it doesn't agree to a deal to resolve the Ukraine conflict within the next 50 days, that was the condition. How does this differ from previous sanctions imposed by the U.S. and allies? Can you tell us about that?
Well, previous sanctions, the more primary sanctions, only affect Russia so much. We don't trade very much with Russia. We don't import oil or gas from them for real. So there's only so much really primary sanctions would have an effect. The other thing is we had personal sanctions against various leaders in Russia and so forth, which could be worked around. It's not a real effective structure to impose sanctions. When you're dealing with secondary sanctions, then you're dealing with people who have a choice. Do they trade with Russia or don't they trade with Russia? Or do they trade with Russian officials or don't they? And it's a question of cost benefit for them. Yeah, I mean, there's always ways to work around sanctions, but if it becomes too prohibitive, people will start saying, nah, it's just not worth it. And that's where those are therefore the sanctions that can really begin to make a difference.
What is your feeling on how effective they could be in pressuring Putin to agree to a peace deal?
Well, I think they can be effective in hurting Russia. I'm not sure it will dissuade Russia from what it's after. At the end of the day, I'm not sure that President Putin is really able anymore to back down on this and to come to a real ceasefire, maybe in the long term. But for the moment, if he accepts a ceasefire, he admits the futility of his adventure in Ukraine. And that could have fairly significant internal implications as well. So I think we're in a very difficult place for him, where on one side, he politically needs to show victory, but on the other side, a victory just eludes him.
And David, on Trump's decision,
become frustrated.
So, sorry, let me just interrupt for a moment here. I want to get your comments as well today on President Trump's decision to send Patriot missiles to Ukraine, but have the EU pay for them. Any thoughts on that?
I'm sorry, I lost the sound on you.
Okay, so President Trump, he's to send missiles, Patriot missiles to Ukraine, right? But he's also saying that he wants the EU to pay for them.
I'm sorry, I lost sound.
Okay, I see. Do you hear me now, David? Or are you still unable to hear? Well, all right, David. In the meantime, we're going to take a break and see if we can fix the audio. And coming up after the commercial break, we have President Trump at a gathering today applauding business leaders who support faith-based causes. Stay tuned for that.
Is deep-sea fish oil really healthy? Due to pollution in the oceans, most fish contain heavy metal elements and radioactive substances. That's why it's so important to choose a pure source of omega-3. Puritang green vegetable omega-3 is made from purslane and perilla seeds, which are rich in nutrients and minerals, especially vitamins A, D, E, calcium, and iron. With natural processing and no harmful chemical additives, it has more than 90% concentration of omegas 3, 6, 7, and 9. It effectively improves brain power and is beneficial to the heart's health. Puritang omega-3 does not smell of fish and contains no pollutants, so both adults and children can safely and easily consume it over a long period of time. Puritang green vegetable omega-3, greener, healthier, and more effective. Visit puritang.com to learn more.
All throughout your home, appliances and systems just wait for the worst time to break down and leave you with expensive repairs. Unless you have a plan from Choice Home Warranty.
All home appliances and systems have a breakdown clock, and when it expires, it will cost hundreds and potentially even thousands of dollars to fix or replace. That's why every homeowner should have a plan with Choice Home Warranty, like I do. For a low monthly fee, a Choice Home Warranty plan will cover your heating, air conditioning, plumbing, appliances, and more. Don't let an unexpected repair wreck your budget. With Choice Home Warranty, that covered repair is fixed or replaced for you.
Choice Home Warranty has been a great company to work with, and they've taken care of us. I would suggest anybody who lives in a home not to be in a home without them.
Avoid the ticking clock of home appliances and systems breaking down with a plan from Choice Home Warranty. Call now to get your first month free. Call in the next 10 minutes and we'll give you $120 off your first year of coverage. That's $200 in total savings.
With a nationwide network of over 25,000 technicians, I don't worry about how my next breakdown will be handled. With a click of a button, my claim is filed, and Choice Home Warranty starts the clock. They do the legwork, hiring the right technician and handling the cost of covered repairs and replacements. And check this out. For a limited time, you can get 1 month of coverage free. Did you hear me? Free. You can't beat that deal with a sledgehammer. But hurry, this offer is ticking away. Once the clock hits zero, poof, it's gone.
Don't fear the breakdown clock. Get a plan from Choice Home Warranty and get round-the-clock money-saving protection you can count on. Call in the next 10 minutes and we'll give you $120 off your first year of coverage, plus get your first month free. This offer won't last long.
Get your home protected. Call now.
Don't wait for an appliance or system to break down. Call before that happens. Call 800-983-3523. 800-983-3523.
And we're welcoming back David Wormser, Senior Analyst at the Center for Security Policy. So, David, what do you make of President Trump's decision to send Patriot missiles to Ukraine, but have the EU pay for them?
Well, first of all, it's good the EU pays for them because right now, obviously, the United States is taxed out. The American people really don't want to pay for more. But as far as the missiles themselves, it's quite a reasonable and frankly, it's surprising that there really hasn't been more air defense sent to Ukraine until now. The fact that they've been facing waves after waves of missiles and drones, there really is no effective defense that anybody's helped them with, has been a problem from day one. So this is actually a very smart move to minimize Russia's continued assaults on civilian targets and cities.
Now, this is something new in recent years, at least. How do you think European leaders are looking at this move?
Well, I think they're looking at it with a deal of hope. They've always looked at the war in Ukraine and Ukraine's military as the largest land army in Europe other than Russia's, and therefore it's a bulwark against potential Russian expansion and aggression into the rest of Eastern, Central, and Western Europe. So for them to see the United States evolve and move more and more in the direction of also seeing Ukraine's defense as something that is a Western interest, I think they're seeing the administration moving in their direction, and I think they're quite happy with it.
Okay, you used the word evolve. I want to build on that. Is this a shift in Trump's approach to the Russia-Ukraine war?
Oh, absolutely. Until now, the United States, under President Trump, made it very clear that the United States wants both sides to stand down and end this, and end it immediately. And Russia simply hasn't fulfilled its end of the bargain, according to the Trump administration. And as a result, you're seeing a growing appreciation of what Zelensky had been saying earlier, which is you just can't trust Putin. And that is essentially where the United States is slowly heading. That's, of course, also where the Europeans had concluded a few years back. So, yes, it is an evolving policy which does see Ukraine no longer as a neutral, but more as a victim in this ongoing conflict at this stage.
But David, I do wonder, because Trump said today he wants a ceasefire or a peace deal in 50 days. Is this move going to affect those efforts to negotiate a deal?
Well, if anything, I think it may help. I mean, you see this also with Israel and the Middle East. I mean, President Trump is very clearly an ally with Israel, sees it as one of America's closest allies, but he still wants ceasefires. But he understands that sometimes there are countries that do not accept the logic of a ceasefire, don't accept a ceasefire unless they feel that it's hopeless to try to win. So in this case, I think he believes that Russia, and I think he's correct, if Russia understands that its continued efforts against Ukraine are only antagonizing America, driving it more into the Ukrainian side, and Ukraine will, as a result, get stronger, that's an incentivization to Russia to begin to come to terms with a ceasefire, even if it involves Putin's not fulfilling all his ambitions.
Okay, can you lay it out for us very simply? I think you've alluded to this, but is this a shift from his previous tone, President Trump on Putin?
Yes, it is. He doesn't trust him as much. He doesn't believe that he's operating in good faith. And that came out from some of the statements and so forth. And as a result, he is operating now with the assumption that force and incentives have to move President Putin rather than trust and agreements. And that's a fundamental shift in his policy toward Putin himself.
And if the U.S. gives Patriot missiles, Patriot missile systems to Ukraine, is that going to improve Ukraine's ability to defend against Russia dramatically, significantly?
I do believe it helps some. The Patriot missiles are not as effective as some of the other air defense systems we've seen used lately in various other theaters, but it is a fairly effective structure for hitting drones, which have been one of the worst weapons that have afflicted Ukraine in its cities. It is not a bad system for drones, and it does shoot down some missiles. Not hermetic, but it's a much better system, and that it's also psychologically incredibly important. If you know you can hit some of the missiles and drones down, even if you can't hit them all, you don't feel as vulnerable, which is what Ukraine was feeling. Is just complete exposure and vulnerability.
Would you characterize this move, David, sort of as the U.S., pushing Europe to lead in this whole situation?
Yeah, I think still that the basic Trump outlook, which is we need our allies to step up to the plate and fill the gap between what is an overextension of American power and where we really want to readjust it to, and yet maintaining the Western alliance. I think this is a good example. We sell to Europe weapons. We're willing to give them the tools to defend themselves. But Europe has to step up to the plate and give Ukraine the tools to defend themselves, but American troops will not go into Ukraine to defend Ukraine. So I think this is a perfect example of the new strategic concept that President Trump brings to the world. We saw it in the Middle East, too.
So I've been following this, and a few days ago there was a report that the United States apparently wants other countries to show their stance in terms of a hypothetical Chinese invasion into Taiwan. So I'm wondering, putting these two reports together, is the Trump administration, do you see this intent for Europe to pay for Ukraine's defense as a maybe potential strategy to shift U.S. focus away from Europe and toward countering China in the Pacific?
Well, yes. I mean, at the end of the day, we know Elbridge Colby, who's the Undersecretary of Defense for Policy, believes Asia is the primary theater and that you don't want to divert too much power elsewhere. But I do think that it's a model, which it started in the Middle East, where we basically enjoyed the fact that Israel stood up and attacked and took down our main regional enemies. And now we have Europe, which is, we hope, will step up to the plate and defend Europe from Russia without America having to commit large amounts of troops or even a lot of coin. And therefore we can focus on Asia. But I still think even in Asia, the United States wants to see our allies do the best they can to step up to the plate and deal with the Chinese threat. And therefore, you see the push also to ask Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan exactly what can you do what can you do for the overall team here. We realize it's a team, and we realize this is where we have to put our effort. But still, we need to know what each of us on the team can do.
Okay, just one last question, David. Do you think that perhaps the Chinese Communist Party is watching what the U.S. is doing right now in terms of the Russia-Ukraine war, in the sense that whatever the U.S. does, it is watching and the stakes are high?
Oh, yes. First of all, the secondary sanctions may apply primarily to them, which would be catastrophic. But beyond that, the more the United States, they thought that there was an isolationist mood in America, and what you're seeing with President Trump is it's a careful deployment of American power, but not a refusal to deploy American power. And that means a lot to China in a negative way. China was counting on the fact that the United States was withdrawing regionally from Europe, from the Middle East, and from Asia. They were counting on the isolationism, and it's not there. President Trump is not an isolationist. He's just very cautious in deploying power and very aggressive in making our allies step up to the plate. So I think China's very worried about it. They're worried about a lot of things. They're also worried about how Iran was taken down by Israel, because this is a great equalizer of warfare, the way it was done. So China's had a very bad month.
Well, okay, David, always great to hear your insight. Thank you so much.
Sure. Thank you.
President Trump today joined a luncheon with business leaders who donate their time to faith-based charitable works. He applauded their support and the mission of the White House Faith Office. Listen.
As president, I've ended the radical left war on faith, and we're once again protecting religious freedom like never before in our country. We're protecting it like never before. I established the White House Faith Office to defend and represent people of all faiths, and it's located in the White House. You've never had an office. You've never had that.
Trump signed an executive order establishing a White House Faith Office in February. According to the White House, the office empowers faith-based entities, community organizations, and houses of worship to better serve families and communities. The office is housed under the Domestic Policy Council and consults with experts in the faith community on policy changes to better align with American values. The president applauded attendees for their outstanding faith and success. Yesterday marked 1 year since President Trump survived an assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania. A Senate report released yesterday said a cascade of failures allowed a gunman to shoot at President Trump during the campaign rally. The report accused the Secret Service of negligence and poor communication in planning and execution of the rally. On Saturday, the president reflected on the past year and the probe into the incident. Here he is during an interview with Laura Trump on Fox News.
That was a mistake. They should have had communications with the local police. They weren't tied in. And they should have been tied in. So there were mistakes made. And that shouldn't have happened. And that building was a prime building in terms of what they were trying to do. So, but I was satisfied in terms of the bigger plot, the larger plot. I was satisfied. And, I have great confidence in these people. I know the people, and they're very talented, very capable. They had a bad day, and I think they'll admit that. They had a rough day. This is a very dangerous job, being president.
In a statement, Trump said he believes divine intervention spared his life for a, quote, righteous purpose. He recalled that just 8 minutes after taking the stage, a bullet came within a quarter inch of taking his life. The shooting took the life of volunteer firefighter Corey Comparator. He was shielding his wife and 2 daughters from the gunfire. In a post on X, the White House says Comparator died a hero, shielding his family from an assassin's bullet, adding, quote, his courage, love, and sacrifice will never be forgotten. President Trump spoke about his administration's handling of the Jeffrey Epstein situation yesterday. Media outlets have cited anonymous sources who said the FBI clashed with the Justice Department over additional information related to Epstein. Trump denied this and denied rumors Deputy Director Dan Bongino was considering resigning.
I spoke to him today. Dan Bongino's a very good guy. I've known him a long time. I've done his show many, many times. And he sounded terrific, actually. No, I think he's in good shape.
In a social media post Saturday, Trump called on his supporters to move on from Epstein's alleged client list. It came days after the Justice Department concluded Epstein took his own life in 2019 and did not leave behind a list of clients. He backed Attorney General Pam Bondi and said some people are trying to hurt his administration, quote, all over a guy who never dies, Jeffrey Epstein. Coming up, the Pentagon is becoming the largest shareholder in an American rare earth materials company. It will be to build out the nation's rare earth magnet supply chain and reduce U.S. dependency on China.
Where did the time go? Somehow I lost all those years. Where did the time go? I don't know how I got here. Or how did I get here?
Done the hard part. You quit smoking. Now do the easy part and get scanned for lung cancer. If you smoked, you may still be at risk, but early detection could save your life. Talk to your doctor and learn more at savedbythescan.org.
My mom and dad were traditional Asian parents. Now my father would go to work before I woke up in the morning, and then he would come home too tired to play with me. I tell my son, I love you every single day. I love you. Now my dad has never said that to me. Not because he doesn't love me, but because culturally it wasn't comfortable for him. So I teased him the other day and I said, how come you never say that to me? And he said, you're too old now. Now that he's a grandfather, he says, I love you to my son every time he sees him. My advice to all the fathers out there, forget the material things, forget the cultural restrictions. They grow up way too fast for you to waste even a single precious minute or moment.
Say bye-bye. Bye-bye.
I am so glad you ladies are here. You each have your own rooms. Thank you. Get settled in. I'll call you for dinner. Adopting teen sisters, it's a lot. Girls, you're gonna be late. You want breakfast? No thanks, we're good. They're always in their own world. What'd you get there? Twice the work. Twice the surprises.
Just try it.
But if you think of it that way, they're also twice as fulfilling.
I think you should ask her yourself. Is it okay to call you Mom?
Of course you can.
On Capitol Hill this week, lawmakers will vote on key funding for the Pentagon and a step towards regulating cryptocurrency. NTD's Melina Weisskopf reports.
It's Crypto Week on Capitol Hill. Lawmakers are eyeing two bills this week to create a dollar-backed stablecoin and make rules for the crypto world. The Clarity Act and the Genius Act will create a regulatory framework for stablecoins, create digital asset rules, and limit market access.
These are the rules that will protect consumers, will limit access to our market and our investors from entities outside the United States.
The Senate already passed the Genius Act with several Democrat votes.
It will drive demand for U.S. treasuries, and it will ensure that digital asset innovation happens in the United States of America, not abroad.
Several Democrats are on board with the House GOP's crypto bills. Full House passage is expected on Tuesday. Another key vote on the floor addresses Pentagon funding. This year, Republicans want to keep funding flat, $831 billion. The party already sent extra money to the DoD in their big budget bill passed earlier this month. This year's defense bill will give service members a pay raise and offset new costs by codifying DOJ cuts targeting waste, fraud, and abuse at the Pentagon. Passage is unclear, though, as House Democrats are expected to oppose it. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
American rare earth materials company MP Materials Corp announced what it called a transformational public-private partnership with the Department of Defense. It's meant to build out the nation's rare earth magnet supply chain and reduce U.S. dependence on China and other countries. Joining us now to discuss this is Nathan Worcester, national political reporter for the Epoch Times. Good afternoon, Nathan. What does the Pentagon becoming the largest shareholder in MP Materials signal about how the U.S. views rare earths currently?
Well, it signaled something to the market for sure. The share price has spiked 54%. And I think it's important to put this in context. Not only would they be the largest shareholder at 15%, but they have committed to purchasing, I believe, $400 million worth of stock. This is certainly an indication that there's a sense now, I think especially after the export controls from China, that it is necessary for the United States to get more serious about having a domestic supply chain for these rare earths that are used in defense and various other important applications.
Is Materials shareholder interest aligned with national security priorities?
Well, it's interesting to consider the big picture here with MP Materials. They have the largest, I believe, at one point it was the only place where rare earths were being extracted. And also they have a processing capability that was enabled in part by $35 million from the Pentagon under the Biden administration. So this recent stakeholder relationship that has been established, it is new, but it is not the first time the U.S. government has taken an interest in MP Materials. But Shenghe Holdings, or rather Shenghe has a relationship with the Chinese government and remains a stakeholder, remains a part owner, but a smaller owner of MP Materials. And I think that should illustrate, among other things, just how difficult it is to operate in the rare earth industry without any Chinese government or government-associated firms being involved.
How or does this move the needle in terms of reducing dependence on China?
Well, so the capacity that they're going to get up to is 10,000 metric tons per year starting by 2028. And that is dwarfed by the amount that is produced on the order of hundreds of thousands of metric tons per year by China. So does it move the needle in terms of the overall numbers? Perhaps to some extent. I think also, as I mentioned previously, those export controls from China, those are forcing the issue somewhat, as is the general Trump administration pivot to addressing some of these gaps that exist in relation to Chinese industrial capacity, mining, and much more. But it, I would say, also is something with clear symbolic importance. I wouldn't be surprised if over the long term we see the European Union or other Western nations considering similar strategies.
Okay, just to follow up on that, to what extent exactly do you think China's export restrictions on rare earth elements impacted U.S. actions?
Well, I think we can look at that happening, and that was at least briefly paused as part of the move that the Trump administration did to just put the brakes on tariffs briefly to carry out negotiations. But I think this is a very meaningful contribution to what we're now seeing play out. I think it's also interesting to consider that MP Materials is not necessarily the only company, and that mine that they have is not necessarily the only place in the United States where one could potentially extract rare earths. I think the notion over the long term of partnerships like this between the Department of Defense or other entities that can, in the case of the Department of Defense, guarantee a price floor, guarantee offtake for magnets over a decade, that could potentially, if we see this replicated elsewhere, make space for entrance to the market that would, under other circumstances, be more speculative or unprofitable.
How do the U.S.'s rare earth capabilities compare to China's right now, currently?
Well, so big picture, China continues to have a near monopoly, not a total monopoly on rare earths. The top line numbers of roughly 60%, 61% of overall mining, but then the processing, that higher value step, where I think we've seen not only is there a lot of commercial potential, but also you can then apply pressure. They control 92% of that. So the United States has a lot of ground to make up. I think it's fair to say that if you were to simply dismiss this as, well, it's only a matter of mining sites in China or something smaller than that, you would miss the bigger picture of the strategic advantages that they have up and down the value chain.
So how did we get to this point where the U.S. is basically reliant on China for rare earths?
Well, I think there were a variety of factors. You look at, for example, the saga of MP Materials. It's gone through a number of different hands. Among other things, there are tailings in mining facilities or at mines elsewhere in the country that, in large part because of existing statutes, but also lack of market demand, nobody is trying to make use of those rare earths. And then, of course, we've had the negotiations over Greenland, which have involved rare earth resources in that country. And I will note that I was told that in that case, without this kind of guarantee, as with any mining project there, it can be highly speculative. You can have something like 1 out of 1,000 projects at that early exploration stage will succeed. And so that means that unless you're willing to bear a lot of risk in some form, this attempt to find and commercialize rare earths or, frankly, other critical minerals, it can run into some real challenges.
Can the U.S. sort of replace China by sourcing from allies?
No, on rare earths, certainly not yet. As I mentioned previously, Shenghe remains a player in this particular company, remains a player in the sector as a whole, I think, in the West. On the other hand, there are minerals, there are sectors where China does not operate with quite the same level of dominance and control. And I think we're seeing moves on that. But, just to focus on another sector, for example, drones, there's a real concern with making sure that if not one company, then multiple companies can challenge some of the Chinese players in that sector.
Okay, Nathan, good to talk to you today. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Heavy rain and flooding are back in central Texas. Rescues and evacuations are now underway, just 10 days after catastrophic flooding killed at least 130 people. Footage shows first responders rescuing a stranded driver near Waco, Texas on Sunday. The man was eventually pulled to safety by boat. In Kerr County, the Guadalupe River is overflowing again. Heavy rains forced a temporary halt to a week-long search for victims. The efforts are expected to continue today. Footage also shows flooding in the Lampasas, central Texas. More than 160 people remain unaccounted for after the July 4th floods. Here are the details on the disaster in Texas.
Rescue operations picked back up over the weekend as water rose in central Texas. The Texas game wardens posted that multiple people have already been rescued, urging the community to be weather aware. The National Weather Service forecasting the Guadalupe River reaching flood stage in several places.
We're not out of the woods yet, not to mention that the recovery zone area there along that river is 121 miles. So it is a very massive undertaking.
Texas Representative Tony Gonzalez is continuing the calls for accountability after floodwaters killed at least 132 people, including 27 campers and counselors at Camp Mystic in Hunt, Texas.
What can we do in order to prevent this from happening again? To me, that is a level of accountability that we need to have going forward. We can't just allow girls to drown in the middle of the night.
Commissioner Don Buckingham with the Texas General Land Office says their office will be in Kirk County to help the community heal.
I know that the people on the fence, the pictures there, that they would want us to rebuild in their memory, and we are going to do that.
Thousands of volunteers like Michael Geyer are working tirelessly to help the families of at least 150 missing people find closure.
Even if it means like just finding the remains, that's more than enough for me to kind of just give satisfaction that I did a job well done. It's very humbling just because all we're finding right now is just belongings.
New York City is now under the threat of storms after parts of the state were hit by floods. The National Weather Service has issued a flood watch for parts of the city until tomorrow. Forecasters warn excessive runoff could lead to flooding in low-lying areas, streets, streams, and other potential flood zones. New Yorkers have been urged to monitor weather alerts and to be prepared to take action if flooding occurs. This comes as roads and underpasses in central and southwest New York were overwhelmed by heavy rains over the weekend. The National Weather Service says some areas saw as much as 4 inches of rainfall. The Weather Service warns never to drive around barriers blocking a flooded road, as the road may have collapsed under the water. It also says just 6 inches of rushing water can knock over an adult, and 12 inches can sweep away most cars. Here in New York City, a separate heat advisory is also in effect from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. tomorrow, with the heat index expected to exceed 100 degrees. New York City Emergency Management is opening cooling centers across the 5 boroughs and urging residents, especially older adults and those with health conditions, to seek relief in air-conditioned spaces. 9 people died and at least 30 were injured yesterday after a fire broke out at an assisted living center in Massachusetts. Fall River Fire Chief Jeffrey Bacon said today that 1 person is still in critical condition at the hospital. Officials say the fire broke out around 9:30 p.m. on Sunday at the Gabriel House Assisted Living Facility. About 70 people live in the house. The fire was out by Monday morning. Firefighters were able to get inside and rescue numerous occupants. Officials say the origin and cause of the fire are under investigation. Jeffrey Bacon described the scene as chaotic. Take a listen.
Fire, smoke, and victims screaming for rescue out windows, and it makes a chaotic scene. We had every firefighter on duty in the city was here, and multiple, up to 30, I believe, firefighters off duty that were recalled that got here quick enough to effect those rescues. So it makes a difficult scene when your job is to put the fire out, but your primary job is to get the people rescued and to safety.
A fast-moving wildfire has destroyed the historic Grand Canyon Lodge in Arizona and dozens of other structures in the national park. The fire, known as the Dragon Bravo Fire, was sparked by lightning on the 4th of July. It has grown rapidly due to high winds and dry conditions. Park officials say up to 80 structures are gone, including cabins, a visitor center, and a water treatment facility. A release of chlorine gas from the water treatment plant on Saturday forced firefighters and hikers to evacuate. No injuries have been reported so far, but Grand Canyon National Park's North Rim is now closed for the rest of the season. Senator Ruben Gallio of Arizona said the state lost a piece of history in the lodge and backed Governor Katie Hobbs' call for an investigation into how the fire was handled. 12 Hong Kong pro-democracy activists filed an appeal today in a case under China's security law. The case spotlights Beijing's ongoing crackdown on dissidents and has drawn international criticism. Here's more.
Security was tight as 12 Hong Kong pro-democracy activists appealed their subversion convictions and jail terms on Monday. The appeal stems from the so-called 47 Democrats case, named for the number of activists who were arrested and charged with conspiracy to commit subversion in early 2021. The court eventually found all but 2 of the defendants guilty of organizing and holding an unofficial primary election in July 2020. Of the 16 Democrats who pleaded not guilty during the trial, 11 have decided to appeal. while another who pleaded guilty is appealing her sentence. The case has spotlighted Beijing's ongoing crackdown on dissent and drawn international criticism. Some countries, including the United States, have condemned the case as politically motivated. They are calling for the immediate release of the Democrats who were sentenced last November to prison terms of up to 10 years. The appeals are expected to take around 10 days and will also include a government appeal against the acquittal of one of the Democrats.
More than 1,000 people gather at the nation's capital to call for an end to a deadly persecution of faith targeting millions. 2025 marks the 26th year of the Chinese Communist Party's persecution of Falun Dafa, also known as Falun Gong, a spiritual discipline that observes the principles of truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance. Alongside human rights champions and many others, Falun Dafa practitioners will hold a rally and parade calling for an end to the regime's campaign against their freedom of belief. NTD's Carrie Dunst and Fiona G will bring it to you live starting at 12 p.m. Eastern this Thursday only on NTD. The initial report on the Air India crash has now been released, and the company's CEO has responded. Campbell Wilson said the report offers some clarity, but also raises more questions. Here's a closer look.
The probe into last month's Air India plane crash is far from over. That's what airline CEO Campbell Wilson wrote in an internal memo Monday. He further said it would be unwise to jump to any premature conclusions. It comes after the release of a preliminary report by investigators on Saturday. It depicted confusion in the cockpit shortly before the crash of the Boeing Dreamliner, which killed 260 people. It said the plane's engine fuel cutoff switches flipped almost simultaneously and starved the engines of fuel. Wilson said the report provided both greater clarity and opened more questions. He added the report identified no cause nor made any recommendations. The Boeing 787 Dreamliner was bound for London from the Indian city of Ahmedabad. The reports released by India's Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau showed the plane began to lose thrust and sink shortly after takeoff. The memo said the preliminary report found no mechanical or maintenance faults. It also said all required maintenance had been carried out. The report also suggested no immediate action for Boeing or GE, whose engines were fitted onto the aircraft.
Coming up, the Axiom 4 space crew is on their way home. Their spacecraft is scheduled to splash down off the California coast. We have that and more after the break.
Shenyun Creations, the streaming platform from Shenyun, featuring world-class dance, past programs, and all original music. Masterclasses, behind the scenes, comedy, and more. Explore shenyuncreations.com.
What if kids in America didn't have to go to bed hungry tonight? What if our moms, dads, and grandparents could put healthy food on the table every day to help us grow strong? What if all of our friends and neighbors had fresh food too, and there was no hunger at all in America? And what if there was a way today for you to help? Call now or go online to helpfeedingamerica.org and give $19 a month, just 63 cents a day. So many of us don't have enough food to eat, but your monthly gift means families across the country and in your community can fill plates with food. Kids can get healthy meals year-round, even when school's out, and our neighbors can have fresh food. Food that moms, dads, entire families need to thrive. But right now, more people are facing hunger. Feeding America works from coast to coast with partner food banks, food pantries, and meal programs. It takes all of us to make that happen. Will you help too? Please call the number on your screen or go online to helpfeedingamerica.org and give just $19 a month, and we'll send you this free canvas grocery bag. It's our way of saying thank you for helping to end hunger for our neighbors. Because no kid no mom or dad. Nobody should go hungry in America. Nobody. So what if today was the day you could help nourish futures for our friends, our families, for all of us? Ending hunger is possible. What if we end it together?
Call or give online today at helpfeedingamerica.org and your gift can be doubled.
Thank you.
Discover the ancient secret to vitality and longevity with Puretang Black Ginseng. Crafted from premium 6-year-old Korean ginseng, each root is carefully nurtured for over 2,260 days, undergoing a traditional 9-round handcrafted process of steaming and drying to unlock full potency and absorption. Experience pure, natural energy with Puretang Black Ginseng. Order now at puretang.com.
Buckingham Palace confirmed yesterday that President Trump and First Lady Melania will meet with King Charles. The king will host the president at Windsor Castle between September 17th and the 19th. A formal invitation was sent to the president in June, but the two leaders were unable to meet during the summer because of scheduling conflicts. The president and the First Lady previously visited the United Kingdom in 2019 and held talks with the late Queen Elizabeth. The 4-person crew of Axiom Mission 4 is on their way back to Earth. The spacecraft undocked from the International Space Station today. A 2-stage Falcon 9 rocket sent the Crew Dragon capsule into space on June 25th. The crew spent 18 days aboard the space station conducting microgravity research. The mission marks the 4th such flight since 2022, arranged by Axiom. The Houston headquartered company aims to build on its business of putting privately sponsored and foreign astronauts into Earth orbit. For India, Poland, and Hungary, the launch marked a return to human space flight after more than 40 years. The trip also marked the first mission sending their astronauts to the International Space Station. The crew is expected to splash down off the California coast early tomorrow morning. Who can take down a mess of mutant dinosaurs at the box office? How about The Man of Steel? Here is the countdown of the top 5 films in theaters this weekend.
Which one of these is you?
I don't know, but I think that one is you.
We begin with Elio, which made $3.9 million for 5th place. The live-action How to Train Your Dragon finished 4th with $7.8 million.
I waited 30 years and came all this way to humiliate myself on global television.
F1 the movie downshifted to 3rd place, earning $13 million. Jurassic World Rebirth lost the weekend crown, falling to 2nd place with $40 million, a 57% drop from its debut.
Let's do it, Cronkite.
Superman.
Time to Fly. Superman, starring David Cornsweet as the Man of Steel, soared to $122 million in its debut, one of the biggest opening weekends of the year.
Coming up, the Defense Department announces new artificial intelligence contracts, and Elon Musk's xAI offers a new model for the government. Find out more after the break.
All throughout your home, appliances and systems just wait for the worst time to break down and leave you with expensive repairs. Unless you have a plan from Choice Home Warranty.
All home appliances and systems have a breakdown clock, and when it expires, it will cost hundreds and potentially even thousands of dollars to fix or replace. That's why every homeowner should have a plan with Choice Home Warranty, like I do. For a low monthly fee, a Choice Home Warranty plan will cover your heating, air conditioning, plumbing, appliances, and more. Don't let an unexpected repair wreck your budget. With Choice Home Warranty, that covered repair is fixed or replaced for you.
Choice Home Warranty has been a great company to work with, and they've taken care of us. I would suggest anybody who lives in a home not to be in a home without them.
Avoid the ticking clock of home appliances and systems breaking down with a plan from Choice Home Warranty. Call now to get your first month free. Call in the next 10 minutes and we'll give you $120 off your first year of coverage. That's $200 in total savings.
With a nationwide network of over 25,000 technicians, I don't worry about how my next breakdown will be handled. With a click of a button, my claim is filed, and Choice Home Warranty starts the clock. They do the legwork, hiring the right technician and handling the cost of covered repairs and replacements. And check this out. For a limited time, you can get 1 month of coverage free. Did you hear me? Free. You can't beat that deal with a sledgehammer. But hurry, this offer is ticking away. Once the clock hits 0, poof, it's gone.
Don't fear the breakdown clock. Get a plan from Choice Home Warranty and get round-the-clock money-saving protection you can count on. Call in the next 10 minutes and we'll give you $120 off your first year of coverage, plus get your first month free. This offer won't last long.
Get your home protected. Call now.
Don't wait for an appliance or system to break down.